Okay. Hi there. We're
Hi.
back thinking about thinking.
Thinking about
Hey, Angus.
thinking,
How are
thinking
you?
about language.
Yes. Yes. Rhonda was not able to join us this week. She's painting, but we can pick up some of the questions that we talked with her about anyway.
That's right. There's been a lot of conversations like in between these meetings, and so perhaps we can it's like develop what we've been developing with Rhonda, but also pick up some other like some really interesting loose ends concerning language.
Yeah. So, what are
Yeah,
your favorite loose ends about language that you'd like to discuss right now?
I think this topic of language and bringing it back to life again,
Mm.
and um, how intimately connected it is to developing imaginative consciousness. I think we'll probably talk about that more when we talk about what we've been reading about in
Yeah.
GA 190, because there's some interesting stuff there. But with another friend, I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita,
Mm.
and I've read it and listened to it so many times, but this time I'm doing it in Italian because she we speak an hour English and then an hour in Italian, but we read the
Wow.
same type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also just things that can pop up there by reading content that you know well in another language. You sort of like go, hold on, that's
Mm.
strange. You know, so this is one of the beauties about learning a language. When you know a language, or you think you know a language fluently, it's like, I understand that, understand that, understand that. So this ability to sort of like really critically ask yourself, do I really understand, and what is it that I
Yeah.
understand? It's a lot easier to live in that tension with a new foreign language, because there's that feeling of doubt, which is
Yeah.
healthy for growing knowledge. And so, in one of the first cantos that we were reading, um, there's these concepts of sin and sacrifice came up, and it was strange. Actually, it didn't like make sense. Obviously, I sacrificio is not going to be difficult to understand, and peccato, okay, that's sin. I know that, but it's like the context and the packaging. It's like in the Italian made me want to question it, and I often do this by first looking at the etymology. But one of the things that I've started doing increasingly is not just looking at the etymology of the Latin, which I know fairly well
Yeah.
now, and the Greek, which I sometimes know, but also adding in the etymology. So, can we find something similar in ancient Egyptian? And
Oh, yeah.
even more interesting, related to the Bhagavad Gita, is can we find anything in Sanskrit? And
Hmm.
that's where sort of like this concept of what sacrifice is and what sin is. I'll stick with sacrifice for the moment, gets transformed completely, because it's like for a modern Western mind, the idea of sacrifice, it's the idea of giving up something to receive something else. And then when you look back, and it's like with the help of AI, you inquire about this word sacrifice that's being used in the Bhagavad Gita, and it'll say, so well, actually what they've done there is, so like they've lumped three, it's like key Sanskrit concepts into one word. Oh, right, and that's
Yeah.
already interesting. And then it basically goes on to describe how, yeah, but their idea of what sacrifice then was is in it's hardly related to what we currently understand with sacrifice. So, what was sacrifice? And every time you read the Bhagavad Gita, when you read sacrifice, what should you really be
Yeah.
understanding by that term? And so, one of the key ideas is that it's about establishing a correct relationship with the spiritual world, forming a participatory relationship
Really?
with the world, and a recognition that and part of this sacrifice involves recognizing the fact that like living it's like in a material body inevitably leads to a clouding of that ability to see clearly. So
Yeah.
the spiritual worlds, and
Yeah.
in philosophy you might talk about it's like intuition, and obviously in Steiner we talk about intuition as well. And so this idea of sacrifice becomes this it develops into an idea of re-establishing a correct relationship between the earth, or between
Yeah.
material matter, and the spiritual hierarchies that are responsible for it, but not just it, but also the whole of creation.
May I ask, in the Bhagavad
Yeah,
Gita, is sacrifice often being used to describe literally the killing of an animal in order to?
I'm going to be careful here. I think never ever.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So how
Yeah.
is it used?
So this is this idea of sacrificing. Sacrificing is used to understand. Perhaps if I start back, go wind back, and then try to answer your question with perhaps a more concrete example. So, what happened? So the story of the Bhagavad Gita, vastly simplified, is you got Arjuna. He's got to fight against like his against his kinsmen, and there's a whole Mahabharata, which I think is about 20 times longer than the Iliad. There's a whole backstory. It's massive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful to get into, and it's never been easier to get into. But so Arjuna, he's despondent. He's in mental pain because killing kinsmen, yeah,
Mm.
it's not something you want to do. And Krishna um, is there as his counselor, perhaps you could call it, or yeah, his spiritual guide, and is saying, "Look, Arjuna, your basic problem is you have lost the ability to understand it's like the difference between what is real and what is not real. It's like the
Mhm.
essence." And so one of he explains that um, all human beings are eternal in their nature, and he'll say something along the lines of uh, this: if the slayer believes he can slay, and the slayed believes he is slain, then he is mistaken,
Mm.
because they don't understand the fundamental nature of this, like the eternal nature of the soul. So all of these things are playing out in the physical realm, and Arjuna is saying, so Krishna is saying, um, who is going to die? That's already been decided. And who's going to survive? That's
Mm.
already been decided. Or so which forces are going to win? Perhaps I should let's say is a little bit closer. But you, as an individual, have to make the decision: are you going to fight or not? And you can imagine, like this throws up as like a load of like very tricky moral questions. But the starting point from the Gita for Arjuna is recognizing his trying to understand it when Krishna says, "You are an eternal being,
Mm.
and all of the difficulties that you have in life stem from the fact that you have forgotten your true essential nature as Atman."
Mhm.
And I still haven't got to an example. Can you remember the question you asked me again? You said, did you say
Well,
you wanted an
I
example?
so
Or
yeah, I was asking how sacrifice is used. Uh, is it an act, or is it more of the, I don't know, the metaphysical concept that we have now?
um, so in the the sacrifice is recognizing in every action that you think you're doing, you are participating in, it's like, in the greater being. So you might talk about sacrifice of the breath, and you think, oh no, giving up breathing, that's not a good idea. But what it means is it's entering into the reality that you only exist thanks to your breath, and you can obviously you can follow it in and out. Your life, as you know, wouldn't exist without it, but it has been given to you by the spirit world. But also, when you stop breathing, it's like I in between breaths. So you breathe in deeply, out deeply, and then pause. That is, that can be considered the sacrifice, and it's a recognition of what breathing
Mm.
is for you. It's your existence. It guarantees your existence. But by entering into breathing's essential nature, it becomes a source of intuition in the same way that mantras do.
Mm.
So the idea of mantras is you live into the sound. You've turned off your intellect, the reasoning, the discerning ability. So you're not interested, and you try to calm the mind to just live into the sound in this case. And when you have managed to, let's say, disconnect yourself from like bodily irritations, memories, thoughts, and it's like the normal things that go on in your life, then you've created the conditions in which, so like that spark or the flash, prajna, can come from the other side. And this prajna is the same in essence as the dat in the in the Hebrew. It's in, what do you call it, in the tarot.
Oh,
And it's the same as the siya in ancient Egyptian religion. When you pick apart what these actually mean, or what they represent for these civilizations, the common denominator is it is a, by sacrificing yourself, forgetting yourself, and
yeah.
understanding the true relationship that you have with the spiritual world, it fills you.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So, like in anthroposophical terms, differentiating between the essential and the non-essential.
Absolutely, and in connecting it to um, anthroposophical ideas, and I think the six basic exercises.
Yeah.
One of the things that you're trying to do there is you're trying to like focus your mind on just one, it's like specific thing, rather than letting your thoughts roam. It's like there's a, you're using the will to direct the content of your consciousness, and in that sense it's identical to ideas of mantras and
Yeah.
visualizations that you find in, like in all of these religions. um, but what is interesting is the clarity with which they presents like the structure of consciousness in these ancient religions. And knowing anthroposophy, you recognize it immediately.
Right.
This is the thing, you recognize it. But if you don't have something like anthroposophy, then it just becomes sort of this jumble of words
Hmm.
that I was reading. What was I reading recently? So one of the things that Steiner develops very clearly, especially in GA2 and GA3, and which is at the heart of GA4, but not explicitly so, is the difference between Verstand and Vernunft, intellect and reason. But these become highly technical concepts, which also map beautifully to the Sanskrit, the Egyptian, and the Hebrew. It's fascinating. But so if other people's like are talking about thinking, then reasoning and the intellect, there's no difference between them. It's sort of like it's some type of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And German idealism is one of these these fundamental differences that if you want to make any sense of, so like the evolution from Kant to Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, and then to Steiner, if you don't really know the difference between Verstand and Vernunft, intellect and reason, and how to rigorously hold to that, then you're swimming in an ocean without any aids.
So that's interesting. Actually, this week I just finished rereading Philosophy of Freedom, and in English, of course, and even noting the translate. I read at the same time. I read a Michael Wilson translation and a Michael Lipton translation, and so I read simultaneously, not one right after the other, so I could keep them in my mind. And I looked closely at the translator's notes, but right now, as we're talking, I'm having trouble bringing to mind, even in the translator's notes, if they were correct, clearly differentiating between Verstand and Vernunft. And so, for my benefit and perhaps others, will you briefly explain how you understand the difference and how those words are translated? I mean, I don't remember seeing the word intellect a lot in any of the chapters. I remember seeing reason a lot. Was intellect transposed for cognition?
So cognition is often erkennen, but it's the act of knowledge. Okay. Go. How should? Okay. So Verstand, which accurately is translated with intellect, is that capacity that we have to divide things up, to identify, to create categories, to divide up the world.
Yeah.
A good way of understanding it, perhaps, is if you think about video cameras prior to AI, they're completely dumb. Right. They just sort of like, it's just light, sort of like coming in. There is no categorization at all going on there. You can't sort of like interrogate the video camera. What have you seen?
Right.
I've seen everything and nothing. Yeah. And the intellect, the categorization that we've talked about in other videos, is this aspect of separating something out from the whole picture.
Oh, yes. Okay. So like the analysis state. Are you saying the intellect is analysis and the reason is the synthesis?
That could be one way of describing it. I mean, we need to be careful with doing like equals, but I can definitely work with that. Yes, absolutely.
Do you remember which chapters this is in most directly?
I think the best book to read for this is GA2, where there is the section, it's called Verstand und Vernunft. It might be intellect and reason, but it's crystal clear. And he continues with that in his doctoral thesis, Wahrheit und Wissenschaft, as Truth and Science. I haven't really followed it too much into the philosophy of freedom.
Yeah.
But when I did find it in GA2, so many things that it brought a new level of clarity to the importance to be able to distinguish between these types of thinking. Yeah. And on that point with the translation of the philosophy of freedom, one of the things that I picked up on, I don't know how well you remember chapter 9, but which is the idea of freedom.
Yeah.
So in German, you've got like two key concepts of motive and
Mhm.
Triebfeder. And I believe it's Wilson that doesn't even distinguish; they're just motives and motives.
No, it
And
was Lipton, I think, who
oh,
changed
was
it.
it Lipton?
Yeah, because I noticed that too. Like you have to have them as two separate words, otherwise it's impossible to follow.
That's right. And so with the German, you can see. I mean, it's, Motiv and Triebfeder is obvious, but also it becomes a lot more obvious um, that the Triebfedern are more linked to body and habits
Mhm.
and all of these type of um, things that bring you down to earth, if you like.
Right, and so I started to understand Triebfeder as Steiner was then equating it to characterological disposition as coined
Yeah,
by Edward von Hartmann.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And
Um,
so it does bring it down into much more like what we would call the etheric body, where it's our habits.
yes, but it's also emotions as well, isn't it? So it's
Yeah.
also astral as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
now,
Hmm.
I, oh no, sorry, that'll just take it. It'll take it too far. But um, so yeah, Verstand and Vernunft. This is the value of. We're talking about the value of learning
Yeah.
languages. Is when you confront something that you think you know in another language, and you don't get exactly what you're expecting.
Hmm.
It's a little bit like a chink in the matrix, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah.
that's how Neo's like recognizes he's living in the illusion. It's the or glitch they say in the movie, don't
Hmm.
they? It's the glitch in the matrix, and it's like makes you go, oh, what's going on there?
Right.
And because we have the tools today with LLMs, I mean, I have no knowledge of Sanskrit,
Right.
but I can feel sort of like that's strange. That
Oh,
reminds me of this,
yeah.
or I see a connection here, and I can test it out and sort of like see
Yeah.
if there is a connection, or if I'm sort of like because
Hmm.
I often add the comments like comment critically on this idea. Um, yeah, so it's yeah, language. It,
Well,
it
okay.
opens doors that it's a lot more difficult, not
Yeah.
impossible, but a lot more difficult to open if you are monolingual.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, at this point, obviously, I've met many people who really only speak English, but they have a lot of exposure to other languages. But I've only met a couple people in my life who are actually monolingual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Yeah. You see how if someone is really monolingual, they don't have as good a perceptive ability to um, deduce or infer whether or not another person who they're speaking to or a text that they're reading, whether or not it's using a word in a way that they um, need to extrapolate the meaning as opposed to their familiar meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And um, my whole experience of it primarily happened through studying Arabic because it really freed up how it reading too. You know, studying European languages, you don't get as freed up with how you read because
Yeah.
with Arabic, you have to read right to left. And and most people have the experience of, if you're trying to speak in a foreign language that you don't speak very well and you have another foreign language that you speak better, words from the better foreign
Yeah.
language will interject themselves. So when I started learning music, to read music, which was after I learned to read Arabic, when I got tired, I would find I was reading the music right to left. Nonsense, of course, but it was funny to see that get overlaid as well. And so there is this loosening that happens through this study of other languages. But another thing that I've often wondered about is, and this essentially comes from people talking about things Steiner said, is like when you have to think in a different language, like let's say you're born into an Arabic speaking
Mm.
region and that's your first language. you are going to think in those patterns, and that will give you certain hindrances or benefits, but it will construct your thinking in a specific way. And so when you come in to learn a second language, do you experience those hindrances or benefits in a neutral way, or are you just experiencing them? Do you understand what I'm saying with this query?
Uh, I think if I can you give an example? I think give an example of what you mean from your own language learning experience.
Well,
I think I'm getting it, but I'm unsure.
I'm more talk. So let's talk about English, because that's for
Mhm.
both of us our native language. Is when you come into the world and English is your first language, um, you will experience the thinking patterns of English most directly,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
will
You
that will allow you to do some things, but it will make it harder for you to do other things. So this is the
yeah.
thing that German, you can move everything around and it doesn't matter, which is
Hmm.
not exactly true because you're changing the case sentence,
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
but and the idea. So as Steiner presents it in GA 190, I think there's some benefit to that the ability to move things around so that it remains the language, but you can change the order, provides the flexibility.
Mm.
Whereas the idea would be in English, we have a less flexible language, and that proceeds to give us less flexible thinking.
Yeah. Okay. So now I think I can give some
Yeah,
like concrete examples, and
yeah,
perhaps you can also from Arabic as well. So when I think about learning a language, I'm acutely aware there's the conceptual stuff. Like in English, we don't have the dative case. If you don't know the dative, you are absolutely stuffed in German. But as it
yeah,
turns out, in Spanish and Italian,
yeah.
even they don't call it the dative, and Russian as well, where they do call it the dative. So it's because we don't have that in our language, we perform that operation in a different way, or actually a multitude of different ways to compensate for the fact that we don't have it. When you have that challenge of grasping something that you just don't know from your mother tongue,
Mhm.
it's a new concept, and then you've got all of the words as
Yeah,
well. And so if you go to something like Russian, which you've got um, uh, each verb has a verb pair. So you've got the perfect and the imperfect aspect for each verb. So, for example, in English, there's just the verb to read,
yeah,
whereas in Russian there's chitat, which I think is the imperfective, and the procitat, which is the perfective. The perfective is the idea. It's like it becomes a completed
yeah.
action, and because we don't think systematically about that in English, that becomes a big challenge for somebody with English as a mother tongue
Right.
for learning. And obviously, the new words and the new the Cyrillic that
Yeah.
you have to learn, so like are further hindrances there, but it ultimately it's still sort of like new words. But yeah, I divide up mentally in my own mind. It's like, okay, this is a new concept which I can't recognize from
Hmm.
a language, and then the more languages you know, the less new concepts there are to
Right.
learn
Right.
with regards to a language learning.
So, um, definitely agree. And one of the things that I've been wondering that I had wanted to bring up in a prior conversation was, so the languages that don't have the indefinite article a or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Russian,
and
for example, yeah.
or the definite article. Russian doesn't seem to have the definite article, or does it?
So yeah, correct. Yeah.
How
What's the situation with what's the situation with Arabic there?
it
I
has
don't
the
know.
definite article, but not the indefinite. So it's very easy because you just use one and not the
Yeah.
other. And so I'm confused about how Russian works. Like, how are people clarifying whether or not it's definite?
How can I think it's do I need to?
You
So
think
if
that's
a
the
language
attitude? It's
hasn't,
like,
if a language doesn't need, so obviously you can always do the indefinite by just
yeah.
saying like adin, one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that's always possible in a language, but it, um, you can say that or this,
Hmm.
which is sort of like somewhat similar
Yeah.
to a definite, but it's not not in
Right.
the way that we do. But I think that perhaps another interesting question on the back of that is, why do we feel the need to differentiate? How does that categorize our thinking, which is
Yeah.
good for knowledge, but how does it trap us because
Yeah.
we have to choose? Am I going to say a table or the table?
Right.
Couldn't I just say table and leave the determinate, indeterminate necessary? And I
Right.
haven't thought about this before, but the first Pythagoras, in his lists of opposites, the first opposite is the limited and the unlimited.
Huh.
So you've got um, there's just an interesting tension in there.
Yeah.
As an English question, you're never going to ask yourself, why do I sometimes use? Well, you know why you use and the, but do I have to use them?
Right.
Whereas a Russian's like talking from her mother tongue, it becomes, oh shit, I've got to begin to like think consciously about whether I mean one
Yeah.
specific or it's like an undefined or an indeterminate um, object. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to picture. That is what
Yeah.
one way is not better than the other. The English is more specific in this particular case. That has its advantages, but it's like the non-specific also has its advantages as well. And this is what language learning like opens you up to, that you don't have to necessarily think in the way that your mother tongue has
Right.
taught you to think.
Right. Um, I remember an old friend who was a linguist, describing like the purpose of the is the definite article is to point to the thing that we both know of. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, it can be also, presumptive. Like if if I start talking about the thing and you don't know exactly what thing I'm talking about, it's a little bit presumptive because um, I'm I'm implying that you must know about this thing.
Yeah.
But
Can I ask a
so
question? Oh,
it's
sorry, go.
also, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. No.
It's about Arabic. So what are the new the difficult conceptually, not the words, but
Yeah.
conceptually, what were sort of like some of the challenges there?
I'd say conceptually, one of the challenges is dealing with the time tenses, and it's primarily because has, English has many times. So I never learned grammar. Actually, most of the grammatical terms I learned for the first time, I learned in Arabic, and consequently, I didn't. Like the dative, I have no idea if there's a dative in Arabic because I don't know what the word means, unfortunately. But
Right.
I know that in English, so in trying to really understand how Arabic time tenses worked, I had to learn more about English time tenses.
Yeah.
And I've come to realize that we have a lot of time tenses, and they really do a good job of trying to specify when in time something happened and if it continues, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so then that is actually something that I would still say is at the highest level of difficulty for me in conveying in Arabic. And as you know, in talking with people in English, it can be like if you say had when you should have said have, or vice versa, in a time
Yeah.
tense sequence, you can intentionally or unintentionally
Yeah.
confuse the other person. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So there's a lot of, we have a lot of ability to kind of manipulate our perception of past time in English.
I think the point that you made about grammar is a really good one. If you really want to understand your mother tongue,
Yeah.
One of the best ways is actually by learning a foreign tongue,
Yeah.
because you begin to ask yourself the question, well, why do we say that? What is it we're really trying to communicate when we use the perfect as opposed to
Yeah.
the imperfect? When do we use the continuous
Hmm.
forms? Why do we do that? And then how is that? Is that even achieved? For example, continuous, the ing form that is so omnipresent in English,
Yeah.
to all intents and purposes, doesn't exist in Swedish.
Oh, really? And in Swedish, how do
So
you convey?
imagine not being able to
Yeah.
say ing any ing like sentences. How do you do that? And there are ways, obviously, of communicating. It's like an
Yeah.
ongoing process in Swedish, but it's not. It's like at the heart of the language in the same way as it is in English. So, for example, in English, there's a big difference between I play and I'm playing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Play, regular habit. I am playing. I'm doing it now. And I
Yeah.
was doing it. I was playing. But in Swedish, jag spelar.
And so do you then add the time? Like I'm playing now. Jag spelar, I don't know, yet.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, you could do. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But so, like, if imagine, so, what are you doing? But yeah, do it. So in English, you couldn't if you ask somebody, "What do you do?" That is radically different from
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" Whereas in Swedish,
Right.
is open, and it's the context that will
Yeah.
determine how should I interpret that.
Hmm.
But yeah, do.
And because they would use the same phrase to ask like what you do for work or what.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, vad jobbar du
Mm.
med? What do you work with? Yeah.
Oh, really? Huh.
One of the interesting things about Swedish is that, from a language nerdy point of view, is it's like an overuse of prepositions. They love slinging in like prepositions. So, for example, in English, you are right. It's like when you're correct about something. I mean, in Swedish, du har rätt i. You are right in.
Right. Really?
Yeah, and
And do you
there are
have to
lots
add?
of these different expressions where you if you leave out the preposition, where in English you don't need it, it's like it
Right.
confuses what it is you're really trying to say.
Wow. Huh. Now, is Swedish most closely related to English or to German?
So uh, it, all three are Germanic languages, but Swedish is actually a lot closer to German than English is. But obviously, English is a bastard child of, it's like Viking, the Viking
Yeah.
language, but more from Denmark and Norway. The Swedes, they went to the east, it's like down into the Rus, into the Ukraine area, especially.
Yeah.
So it's more Norwegian, Danish Vikings that basically moved in after the Romans moved out, and it's the stock. It's what feels like most English is what we have from the Scandinavians, but ultimately they are all Germanic languages. A lot of people don't even know. If you're not a linguist, it's quite probably you think that the idea that the English is a Germanic language is sort of what got nothing to
Oh,
do with
really?
German. Sorry, you don't know your facts. It very much is.
Yeah.
But it's got a huge French overlay on from, it's like when the Normans invaded in 1066. French became the courtly language,
Mm.
so you got, it's like that the whole population spoke a form of Scandinavian, a form of
Yeah.
Viking English, and then you had this like cultural overlay. I don't know. Imagine it's like if America's like all of a sudden it's like all of the government decided, okay, we're going to perform all work in, I don't know, Mandalay or Arabic.
Right.
Not likely to
Right.
happen,
Right.
but it creates a hierarchy in the
Yeah.
perceived
Yeah. Of
importance
course.
of the language.
Right. Right. Hmm. Um, so on the topic, one of the interesting things in GA 190 that I wanted to ask was
Mm,
the the statement Steiner makes that the dead have trouble comprehending nouns.
yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it?
It's and so it of course it makes me think of, this what I'd call kind of a modern slash new agey philosophical emphasis on emerging or becoming,
Hmm.
and this idea that verbs express that. But I'd be curious what your perspective is on why would verbs be easier to understand for the dead?
Okay. I'll give you a direct answer in a second, but it's like just a little anecdote because I was
Mhm.
talking with my Swedish group on Sundays, just the Sunday gone,
Yeah.
and in English the beginning of John is in the beginning was the word,
Yeah.
and in German is am Anfang war das Wort, and in Swedish I början var ordet. And I said them, I asked them the question. So, but is it really ordet, the word? And they said yes. And I said, no, it's verbet. Because if you, and it's not like one is right or the other, but if you go to Italian, if you go to Spanish, if you go to French, in the beginning was the verb. Now, what is
Mm.
going on there? One way of understanding what a word is like it's a dead noun. It's like something that's become abstract. The Latin languages retained the feeling that this is an activity. The and I'll come to logos in a second, but the
Yeah.
logos it isn't just it's like a static thing,
Yeah.
which is what the word converts it into. For the romantic languages, no, it has to be something that is active. It's a verb. It's a doing
Hmm.
word. And then, of course, if you
Yeah.
go to the Greek, it's logos, which isn't just action. It's like it's the source of absolutely everything. It's if you any ology that you can think of is like implicit in that is the logic, the creative, the, the creative structure behind it's like what we are seeing. So when biology is the logic of life, but where it's describing the whole phenomena of
Yeah.
biology. So it's like goes even further than the idea of because verb can often be seen perceived as a dry grammatical concept. But again, once you look into it, you realize no, verb is there is still life in it.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not a dead abstract. It's not a dead abstract now.
Right. Right.
What about yourself? Um, when you were reading, what was your own way of making sense of this importance of verb contra word stroke noun?
Right. I guess the easiest way is that verbs are more likely to create pictures that are moving in one's head.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, some nouns will, the noun pen creates a picture, but other nouns, like I think diligence was used in there, yeah, that doesn't really create a picture.
So a pen. So
Yeah.
let's say we're trying to talk to the dead,
Yeah.
and so what Steiner's saying, he said, don't think of pen,
Yeah.
think of writing thing.
Right. Because they can't have this experience anymore.
It's a pen is something. It's removed itself from the activities.
Yeah.
Spirit is continual flowing activity.
Yeah.
And so I love the way he describes it. It's like it's imagine this is like me interpreting a little bit what he's saying. But he's saying imagine having a conversation with somebody, trying to have a reasonable conversation, but every time somebody uses a noun, it's like there's interference.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the picture he's
It's
communicating.
exactly. It's lovely that way. Yeah.
And this again, this is where language becomes interesting because you start to think. in a different way. So, like all of these different nouns that we use, these names that we've given objects, we can begin to try to think, well, why is it? Why is it called pen?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I'm thinking about, I can't. I'm not even sure why it's called pen. Um,
I don't know either. Is it from French?
I'm wondering if it might ultimately be from. Let me just
Yeah, yeah.
check whilst I'm thinking. Um, I'm going to guess, but and then I'm going to fact check myself. But that the original Latin for feather was something like penum or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, pen writing implement from the Old French penne, which means quill.
okay.
So there we have it. Latin penna, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So that was it meant quill or it meant feather.
yeah,
Yeah.
feather.
Yeah.
Um, and then if I was sort of like really chasing that up and sort of like think, well, we got writing instrument as what it is that makes it something, or a writing thing that makes it intelligible. But you could imagine having some like quite good fun and games. Like if you like playing with words, it's like, okay, how could I describe? It's like all of these different various objects, and it's not like one answer. Pen could
Right.
be a oh, blackness making
Right.
implement,
Right.
or in this case, a
Right.
blueness it's like making
Yeah.
implement. Um, uh, and so you automatically, so it comes to life just when you begin to re-ask yourself this question. If I'm not going to call it a pen and I have to get in some type of activity there,
Right.
what would I like to do?
And and yet, like when it would be a fun exercise to try to have a conversation without using nouns, but it's basically like we don't have that ability to communicate in language. We can only do it in pictures.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the pictures. Did you want to say something about pictures there? Because that's also
No,
an
no. Go
important
ahead.
point that he raises
Yeah.
in 190, doesn't he?
Yeah. What are you going to say?
Oh, that. So when it comes to this question of what living thinking is, one of the ways of describing it, and I think this is also useful to think of it. Let's not go for one definition. Let's go for lots of different ways of describing what living thinking is. But he talks about the importance of actually using imagery to
Yeah.
communicate. In this case, with the dead, because it still has an activity in it which is perceivable. So he's communicating this idea that the dead see the activity and not the
Hmm.
actual uh, resultant
Right.
effect when we turn verbs into nouns. Um, yeah.
It makes me think of, again, kind of an anecdote that was told about Steiner, which is he said that the angels really like to observe people writing, but it's not really the writing itself that they're observing, it's the action of writing. And for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
that's enjoyable to observe.
That's the first time I've heard that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Really?
It is that, yeah. But I did, by reading this 190, it also did make me think about the fact that this particular period, I think from the late 170s GA and into the 180s, but I didn't know into the 190s. But Steiner does seem to have this, it's like long, prolonged interest in. communicating. It's like with the dead is as a result of the First World War,
The war.
etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he talks about also about the impulses that are coming from the dead at that time. But it is really interesting how it pops up in lots of different scenarios. And in this case, like
Mm-hmm.
how do you communicate with them? And I remember a long time ago, it was like early days of reading Steiner, being particularly, or a thought resonating particularly strongly with me. This idea that when you think good thoughts about the dead, they experience it on the other side. And we have the sayings that you don't talk evil, don't talk bad about the
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
And to hear the other side of it, and to hear the inner logic of why you don't do that. It's like through Steiner it was
Mm.
one of those moments that's like you go, yeah, something's changed in me, and then you can like, if you choose to, you can think about, okay, can I actively cultivate some of my memories, so that those people that I was particularly close to, that were particularly important to me, that they can't choose their thoughts, but I can actually feed them from
Mm.
this side, give
Mm-hmm.
them like energy or some
Yeah.
type of boost. Um,
Is that one of the characteristics of being dead, that one can't choose one's thoughts anymore?
yeah, I mean, if you don't have a physical body, then you're just like all of these things it's like course through you, but if you are not an initiate and you're dead, I mean, basically you end up being in the like dream state that
Yeah.
we're in. But there also, you see, that's not so black and white, because I'm sure you've
Right.
had dreams, some dreams where sort of you're completely at the mercy, and so like things are being steered around you. But then other dreams you probably had where there is some type of a thinking process going
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah. Definitely.
So it's not an I don't see it as an
Not
on
black
off
and white.
switch.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that had struck me, and I don't know what, but some statements about the dead is this statement, and it might be in here also. This statement that if someone hasn't cultivated spiritual ideas while alive, when they become dead, they are unable to take in much of what's going on, because they have no conceptual framework for dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so I started, I write novels, so I started writing scenes about these dead people who had been very immersed in like materialistic laboratory kind of
Mm-hmm.
research, and then after death they're just like hungry and talking about going to the tea shop to get scones, and like not able to do it, not able to really have any other experiences or perceptions other than this kind of loop. And
Mm.
you know, I I'm interested in, I guess, what should I say? I'm interested in this question of like, we obviously spend a lot of time cultivating spiritual ideas, but it still all appears to be a mystery to me at least, where it's like, and I haven't even known that many people who have been close to me who have died. So I haven't had a lot of opportunity to really sense out what it might be like for them, or for my connection with them. And I hear more about this from the people around me who have had more close people die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting when you read. Um, I suppose in a certain sense, I am fairly similar to you. There's not many people close to me who
Mm.
have died, um, so it hasn't. You read some people's biographies, or you hear people telling their own stories, and death of really important people at an early age like has like a really strong impact on them. But I don't fall into that category.
Yeah.
I recognize that. But I think it's also historically it's interesting because when you look at if you go back in time like 500 1,000 years, the idea it was still alive in Europe that the forefathers they were still contactable
Mm.
for advice,
Hmm.
that you didn't just sort of like try to arrive at a correct decision by reason.
Yeah.
You try to commune with your forefathers um, to have to get advice on like how to handle a situation, and both Swedish and English, as Swedish and German, and perhaps other languages as well. I haven't thought about it in detail, but I don't. There's a German word Ahnen, and it's the same word in Swedish,
Oh,
Anna, which means to to get a hint of, to get an idea of, to get a feeling for. It's like it's a complicated sort of like,
yeah.
and it's a little bit like an intuition as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the last 3 weeks of the soul calendar that it's like it's been there. It's this idea of like opening up receptively for something that isn't there yet, but so
Mm.
like it can come. So, but if you want the word for forefathers is Ahnen
Oh,
in German.
oh my.
So this verb, this concept of it's like getting subtle hints from the other
Yeah.
side or intuiting and feeling, it is baked into this verb. Where in English there isn't a good translation. So if you want to say in English like I've got no idea what he's talking about, keine Ahnung,
Right. Of
keine
course.
Ahnung.
Right.
But and there you get a feel for this genius of the language that Stein is often on about. It's like, but why? How have we lost something that's so essential to
Yeah.
German? And Anna use it a lot in Swedish, not quite as much as in German, I would say. But in English, we've sort of like we've lost that, and so we have to use other words that never really quite capture.
Yeah.
It's like the
Right.
that historical sense that's also there with Ahnen.
That's interesting.
Um,
And now I'm thinking of, because I just read it in the past 2 days, these chapters about moral intuition and moral technique and philosophy of freedom, and this overall, the theme through that book where Steiner is using the term intuition, which I think is a
mhm.
direct translation from German,
That's right.
meaning
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, and it is intended to refer to the experience of getting the ideas or concepts and bringing them into one's thinking, right?
Yeah.
And when it's moral intuitions, it's getting the right ideas or concepts about future actions that one could take. So, that now we're going to compare it to imagination, inspiration, and intuition, which
Mhm.
are necessarily, we have to understand those differently, but there has to be some connection between these two states, right? Intuition and intuition.
Between imagination, inspiration, and intuition.
Between the intuition of that trio and
Mhm.
the intuition described in philosophy of freedom, or the phrase used in philosophy of freedom, of getting the ideas.
Yeah, except he doesn't use the word inspiration, does he, in the philosophy of freedom?
No, sorry, maybe I'm speaking too quickly. In philosophy of freedom, the word intuition is used a lot
Yeah,
to
it's
describe getting.
essential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm asking, in the trio, in imagination, inspiration, and intuition, the meaning of that intuition. How is that related to the intuition that's referred to in the philosophy of freedom, of getting the ideas?
Um, So this word, a couple of observations. First, it's interesting. Steiner does really try to remain true to Germanic words, and obviously, imagination, inspiration, and intuition are not. They're
Right.
Latin words.
Yeah.
Um, and part of certainly the intuition part is somewhat linked to philosophy, although the Germans they had intellectuelle Anschauung, so he could have used that. So it is interesting because he does talk about how well adapted German is
Hmm.
for spiritual science, but then it's like falls back to Latinates there. Um, and also there are other sort of interesting circumstances where was it in Christus Morimur so um, some of the cultus moments in more esoteric parts of anthroposophy also have this tendency to go back into Latin. Um, that was just like a more side observation, but intuition. This idea. It's like has lots of different names, and as I was hinting at earlier, it's like you can find a direct correlate in um, Sanskrit, ancient Egyptian, in Greek,
Hmm.
in Hebrew. Hebrew is really interesting, actually, going back to Verstanden, Vernunft, because you get it there essentially as well. But what is it? What is it saying? It's in that word. If you understand, it's like the one of the primary objects or primary goals of the first 7 chapters of the Philosophy of Freedom, recognizing the fact that perception without thinking is like the video camera we talked about
Right.
previously. It's undifferentiated noise. We cannot, if thinking is grasping the concepts or the verbs, the activity that actually created and what we've separated out. Um, so when we let's play with an example and see where it takes us a little bit. So the concept of a tree, there's nothing strange about that, but obviously our video camera, it's like it doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So where does this come from?
Hmm.
Is it just a fiction of the mind, which is what a Kantian person would think? This is just a label you stuck on it. It's got nothing to do with it. We're using the Verstand, we're using the intellect to divide up so that we can have knowledge about things, but it has no intimate relationship. Steiner is saying, no, if you've understood what thinking really is, it's identifying a real um, forming, shaping aspect in the world.
Yeah.
And so trees are obviously something that are living and growing, and then you can subdivide it down into another category. Which might be, let's say, birches or
Hmm.
something like that. And there, obviously, a birch isn't the same as an oak. It's a tree, but
Yeah.
if you give it time, the differences become obvious. But you could call, instead of calling a birch a birch, you could call it a birching thing. Do you know what I mean? That the activity that
Yeah.
creates
Yeah.
birches, and an oak is an oaking thing, something, an
Yeah.
activity, a verb that creates the form of an oak. And obviously, the more richly you actually know what a
Yeah.
birch or an oak looks like, relative weights, colors and shapes and root
Yeah.
system and all that type of thing, then that picture becomes more real. But the essential idea is that there is a real activity there, and that would remain invisible to us if we didn't have thinking. We wouldn't divide
Hmm.
up the world. But when we go back in time, Greeks and earlier, they still saw the world as they recognized how thinking informed the world, whereas we
Yeah.
are now in a position where we tend to, the two, they flow together automatically, and we don't understand how intuition is something that is given
Hmm.
to us, is something, it's a perception. So he will
Right.
talk about thinking, the organ of thinking, in the same way that light is seen by the eye.
Hmm.
Thinking perceives intuitions.
Yeah. 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 That's very nice.
Does that answer your question, or were you trying to get at something else there?
It's getting there. But it leads to another question, which I've been, one of the things that I talk about with Rhonda a lot is, let's say, a cultural aversion to the create your own reality kind of
Mm-hmm.
modern new age thing. And, in reading the Philosophy of Freedom and in reading GA2 and 3 also recently, I felt like, there's ways to interpret that set of work as if, oh, well, your thinking constructs your reality. And so
Mm-hmm.
then there's no other way to say that. Then it's like you choose what you think, and that creates your reality. Uh, and so the tool that's described in Philosophy of Freedom most directly is the mental picture, which is the thing that is interspersed by our thinking between the percept. After the percept and the concept are grasped, then we come away with our mental picture. And our mental picture is subjective, and it is what I would call editable, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then our personal subjective editing of our mental pictures creates our reality. Do you agree with that as an interpretation?
Let's work it through with an example and see where it hits and where it misses. Um, we need an
I think the
example.
example given in one of these books is, a friendship or a relationship. Like if you cultivate the mental pictures of the other person in their
Mm-hmm.
most positive light, then the friendship or the relationship is much better off than if you do the opposite.
So one of the things I've been looking at, and I want us to go like
Yeah.
backwards and forwards, like
Yeah.
testing it. But one of for the last couple 2-3 weeks, I've been watching quite a few NDE, near-death experiences, people talking about their
Mm.
own NDEs, and meta studies have been done on this type of thing. But one of the things that has struck me particularly this time, because I do have periods where I like dip into it because there's something deeply
Yeah.
stimulating for me in watching it. And I also have reservations, but I don't need to talk about those now. One of the things that's like struck me particularly this time is the amount of people talking about the reality of your thoughts. So they've gone into this near death state. They're doing some type of life review. It's not always uh, last to first. So often in these ones, it's first to last, which is also, I wonder what's going on there. But
Yeah.
what they talk about is they are led through like these, it's like different moments of the life. Or actually, there's sometimes it's presented as. I remember one lady, it's like talking about it as, imagine these old projectors. It's like that with
Yeah.
Kodak, so you just
Yeah.
like move the slide around, and she was describing how each slide was like an event of her life which she could sort of like dive into and be completely immersed in it. And one of the things that struck her most was this ability to see how the thoughts directly impacted like
Hmm.
the person that they were communicating. So the thoughts might have been silent, but they received it. They didn't know why they were receiving it.
Yeah.
But it's like when a kind thought was thought, it was received, and then they talked about it's like how it had it's like later it's like positive spin-offs, and on the converse as well. It's like how, like Steiner says, thoughts are like bullets.
Yeah.
Um, that some of these nastier thoughts,
Yeah.
they are just as real. So from one perspective, you're saying you are you saying you're creating your reality, or is it actually perhaps more accurate to talk about by being conscious about your thinking, you can begin to have a different impact on the world
Right.
around you. Um, I mean, that might be one way of framing it. And if people like think that sounds too new agey, then yeah, I mean, perhaps some people don't want freedom. I don't know. I don't know how to how can I
Right.
express it? Go on, give me
Right.
some argue against, or give me another story.
Sorry, what did you say?
We wanted to like flesh
Yeah.
out: are we
Yeah.
creating reality? Are we not? Because the frame that I understood it in was it's like a general aversion to this new age idea: you create your reality.
Yeah.
And whilst I can understand that, so like if we take Stein at his word and these
Yeah.
NDE
Yeah.
experiences of the world, of course we do.
Right. Right.
So perhaps if I phrase the question like this: so what is it you don't like about this idea that you can create your reality?
And I should say this is less my aversion than something that I've
Okay.
discussed a lot with Rhonda. And I
Hmm.
say this because she's part of this conversational series,
Yes.
and we've talked about it before. But and it is, but I am looking for the evidence, I guess, that that is how it works.
Oh, I know. In that case, I can give you loads. Uh, about 60,000. Oh, this was when I did the first videos on my YouTube channel about the placebo and the nocebo effect. One of the
Oh,
most
interesting.
interesting like phenomena in medicine.
Yeah.
And there are boatloads. I mean, really boatloads of
Yeah.
studies that like prove it's like your relationship to the drug. If it comes in a shiny package and you think
Mhm.
shiny means better, it'll work more. If you
Mhm.
think bigger means better, then it'll work. It'll work better. If you think a needle is more effective than taking a tablet,
Right.
it'll work more. But it's always just a saline solution. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
But the opposite is true as well with the nocebo effect. If you believe it is damaging,
Hmm.
but it ain't,
Right.
it's like purely from a physical perspective, you can make it damaging. So placebo and nocebo effect are, so from my own perspective, one of the most it's like scientifically grounded series of studies. And because if you think about all the drugs, or nearly all the drugs that have ever like come to market, it's like this is the gold standard. It's
Right.
like passing the placebo trials. So I've got some books on my shelf there from when I was really interested in it. But it there is no doubt in my mind that how I think about something
Right.
has a real effect on, in this case, it's like the impact on my body. And then when I think about NDEs and Steiner and thoughts and bullets, I sort of say it's part of the same spectrum.
Yeah.
I can control. Control is perhaps too strong a word. Like be conscious about what type of thoughts I entertain, whether they are harmful or health giving,
Hmm.
and recognize that like perhaps that same process that's like is just working like in this physical etheric astral body constellation well, if it's happening here, perhaps it also happens out in the world
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So I agree 100%. And I also think the placebo nocebo is phenomenal proof of this. So then the question becomes, okay, so once one has proven it to oneself, how do you get better at editing the mental picture or changing the thoughts if to the ones that are most suitable? Like after you've demonstrated it to yourself, are you able to say, "Oh, I do 100% on my thinking now"? I'm guessing
No,
not.
I think this is really interesting because this opens up the aspect of the importance of the feeling life
Mm,
in using the feeling life as trying to gauge whether something is healthy or not healthy, and then trying to work back. So a um, if I have some type of hang up or fear, something that makes me feel uncomfortable, if it's just a passing event,
mhm.
then so like I just let it go. But if it's something that comes back time and time again, then that for me is an indication that I need to change something. I might know, I almost definitely don't know immediately what it
Right.
is, but so it's taking, from my perspective, it's taking my own emotional response. It's like seriously, and not necessarily meaning like having to change something immediately and knowing exactly what it is, but so a little bit so like that. What does this word mean? It's like, what does this discomfort
Mhm.
mean? What can this discomfort tell me? I think, is it in the philosophy of freedom? I can't remember where he talks about it. Um, but he no, it's the knowledge of higher worlds. He talks about the feeling life becoming a tool for self-education as opposed
Yeah.
to just sort of like trying to get as many likes and avoiding as many dislikes as possible type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not all, but I think the dream life is interesting there, at least from my perspective, because at different phases in our lives, and this might be something people recognize, is we might have dreams that repeat themselves. There's a certain character about them. Now, some of these can actually be ones that, in a strange type of way, have some type of handle on the future.
Yeah.
But others can be a wake up call, or I experience them as to wake up as a wake up call to something is wrong here. Something needs to change. And
Mhm.
if a dream, the more often a dream repeats itself, it's, for me, it's like it's a warning flag.
Yeah.
This is one that you want to pay attention to.
Mhm.
So I use it
Yeah.
a little bit like a diagnostic tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it ringing true with any of your own experiences?
Yeah, and, um, I'd say that, for me, I'd say mostly my dreams are just kind of, reflective of what's going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And they have motifs that repeat. For instance, we moved a lot for several years, and it was in between nice places. And all my dreams during that period of time, like all the ones I remembered, took place in luxury hotels. And it was always different luxury hotels, but it was like this is the motif. All my dreams are in different luxury hotels and like resorts with all the stuff, like and all the people, and they're all my dreams are always very crowded with people, which is just so there's a motif, and actually recently that motif shifted because I feel like we're moving less and we've settled down more. And now it's seaside villages, but but the point is, it's not. I don't I I I don't really have warnings come to me through dreams. I'm just not there. I'm more.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time in I'd say reflection, and things come consciously that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating how different we are, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so I had one more. So in Philosophy of Freedom, I had to look it up, but it was in chapter 3 in the 1918 edition. There's this line that real thinking or genuine thinking is always willed. You
Mm-hmm.
recognize it?
Yeah. Don't recognize it immediately, but I think it talks to this living thinking question that we've been circling around quite a bit. The question is who or what is doing the willing. I
Oh.
think,
And so in the context, I had interpreted it as I am doing the willing.
yeah. But how often can we really say, I am doing it? And also, so the essential aspect of intuition is I can only will the state in which it presents itself to me. That breakthrough, that flash moment,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
that is not something I don't sort of like structurally walk my way up to it.
Yeah.
I can it's like I can provide the mental terrain in which it happens. And one of those things, one of the ways of doing that is by, we talked about mantras, for example, earlier. But if it's like something more mundane, it's sort of like it's repeatedly working through a problem or thinking about it until suddenly you go, bing.
Yeah.
That problem you've
Yeah.
got, so like with the X, Y, Z. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And and then the solution just it presents itself to you, and then you recognize, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But you can't say that is. Perhaps we should talk about it's my. Can't say it's my little I. That must be a big I
Right.
that's
Right.
actually putting it into me. But then we've got, and this is where 190 is also interesting. Is yeah, and also the characterological dispositions. To what extent is it so like not my big I
Hmm.
that is like willing in there? To what extent might it be luciferic
Right.
will? To what extent might it be Ahmanic will? To what extent might it be so like the will of my body, so like the impulses, the will impulses that live in there? Because whilst they, to a certain extent, are reflections of my big I, my super I don't know, true I. Let's say true I, true
Right.
I. I like the big eye, little eye because I think of Pocoyo. He's like the little Spanish guy.
No.
You don't know it, okay?
No.
Pocoyo means little eye, and he's
Oh
this little. Have you never seen the
no.
videos?
No.
Oh, okay. A big eye, little eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, it's like our bodies. It's like the karma has ensured that it's like the will impulses have been given. They are like put into us by given us by the big I in
Yeah.
harmonies like with the high worlds. But ultimately, these are lower will forces that we want to overcome.
Hmm.
So this living quality becomes actually a lot more dynamic. Is it my little I that's sort of like providing the will here
Right.
to create the thinking? Is it Lucifer? Is it Adaman? Or is it really it's like the highest? It's like
Yeah.
which is intuition, the true I, or yeah,
Yeah.
or that dot.
Yeah. How do you differentiate? No smoke.
Um, no, um, I don't. How do I differentiate between what is going on there? Okay, let's try out this as one possible answer. Um, and this is a topic we've talked about before, and Rhonda's been in on the conversation as well. this idea that Lucifer is purely 100% bad
Mm,
is ridiculous. This
mm,
idea that Ahriman is purely 100% bad. Um, so I can recognize where it's coming from, but I still have to determine, so try and determine whether this is healthy.
mm.
Um, um, because we are going back to the where we started with the and the. It's like the indeterminate and the determinate, or
Yeah.
the limited and the unlimited, which is actually a more correct translation of Pythagoras. But we are beings that live both in the definite or the limited and the unlimited or the infinite. And Aaron helps us sort of like have our um, I consciousness. It's like the grounded I am, both good and bad.
Hmm.
And Lucifer is like it's that freeing, it's that releasing the no limits aspect to us. When either of one of those work destructively in my environment, then that to me is an indication that perhaps I'm strong enough to, to not do it anymore. Um, and the intuitions, what I mean, these, I think these come to perhaps people more often than they really recognize. These like flashes, these
Yeah.
sudden like, I know what to, I know what to do. Um, those could be bodily. You could say they were also like just the mental representations, but there's still something. There's a living quality about them that's like that solves the problem. And then the intuition aspect, um, I specifically link to more meditative states. I'm not saying it's only there, but those moments in meditation where something clearly new, like radically new, comes. So you know you haven't like got there step by step by step,
Right.
but there's this feeling of expansion and more complete understanding of X, Y, Z, which isn't there. It's like those flashes of ideas that suddenly solve a situation. As like in, let's call it normal real life.
Right. Yeah.
What about yourself? That sentence, if we go back to it, do you want to
Real
read it
thinking.
again from The Philosophy
Real
of
thinking
Freedom?
is always willed.
Yeah. What are your own thoughts about that?
And the way I understand it is like the process of moving picture meditation that is described so many times by Steiner, which is that's a will activity to go through that, to cultivate the seed from the and then the sprout
Mhm.
up to the blossom. Like that takes will effort, and it
Yeah.
is a thinking process. It's not a moving process. So that's the I want to say that's the physical experience that I tend to link with that sentence. And it's not physical, but it's
Yeah.
the analogy of physical, but happening
Inside.
in the thinking.
Yeah.
That's how I've always understood that sentence. But it makes me think of course, there's effort required in that, and the idea is that the more one practices, the easier it gets. But it means that to really kind of go through the processes of cultivating thinking requires the things that we refer to as like focus or attention or um, you know being able to hold a line of thought and the effort that it requires.
Linking into um, so a thought that's been growing in me, having spent more time working with chapter 9, the idea of freedom and the characterological dispositions and the motives, and also the different categories that he references in relationship to Hartman there. I think it would be really interesting to somehow, I don't know, have a workshop, have conversations with people about trying to identify which characterological disposition is actually going on there, because it's a will that is informing you to, it's giving you the energy to act.
Yeah.
Okay. So a more conscious work with both the motives and the characterological dispositions, the Triebfäden there, in, and I don't want to say systematic, but one where we are more regularly asking ourselves, so like, where is that really coming from, that will to act in
Mm.
a certain way? Do I find it, because he talks about like the drives and then tact and then feeling and then practical experience and then finally like moral intuition, but go away, fly. Flies, there's two of them. How there's a lot of value. It's like in the self-knowledge realm for identifying, so we're not going off theorizing about something else. We're trying to, it's like, deepen this self-knowledge
Yeah.
process. What is actually causing me to act in this particular way? And there might be certain things that I do that as like a healthy and it's like what's going on there, but also my unhealthy aspects. What is going on there? And ultimately, do I want to do anything about it? And then how do I do anything about it? And I think that's where also the motives become obviously interesting and relevant, because they are all, it's like, future directed.
Mm-hmm.
And that plays into, you create your own reality.
Yeah.
You create your own inner state.
Yeah. So that kind of characterological disposition work sounds fascinating to me. I love that kind of stuff, but it also makes me think of like biography work from an anthroposophical point of view,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that's where we discern so many of these persistent patterns.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We should wrap up. Do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up today?
I'm going to say no, even though I think yes. Just because it's so nice talking to you.
Yeah.
But no, I realise that
Yeah.
I'm sure we can carry out on later. But
Yeah.
what has been nice is to, it's like, get a little bit more into, it's like, living thinking, the
Yeah.
relationship with will. We touched on a little bit on abstract, so we've kept to the core of things, but added a lot of sauce around it as well.
Yes.
Or not sauce, flowing, tasty stuff.
Oh yeah. So this is the difference between the American accent and then the English. I was hearing you say source, and you were saying sauce.
Aha, sauce. Yeah.
It's a very different picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna hit end recording. Thank you.